Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is the Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. On today's episode, War and Peace? Whatever. Everyone's talking about that Oval Office eviction. So are we, and Friday Night Lights Out. And the Epstein files are back to page one after last week's dud of a drop in the Big Letdown. Kennedy has been at the helm of HHS for a couple of weeks and will help navigate the chaos in the Bobby Kennedy report. Finally, it's just another quick fix to flex the brain in Just for Fun, Volume 66. All this and more in this edition of the Conservative Five.
Give me a C. Give me a 5.
It's the latest debate spurring Americans to the keyboard. The showdown in the Oval Office between J.D. Vance, Trump, and Zelensky, resulting in Ukrainian embarrassment, progressives keening, and one ambassador trying her best to vanish into thin air. Name calling? Check. Raised voices? Check. And it all came down to telling Zelensky to take a hike. For a refresher, let's roll this short video just before things went south, way south.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. What you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
There's a lot of times.
No, in this entire meeting, you said thank you.
Today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble. Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks if this cabinet and all the...
Well, Dave, so many nuances, or not, so little time. What happened?
Okay, let's start with the obvious. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky was poorly prepared for this meeting. I mean, he wasn't up for what he was about to encounter. Mr. Z made the mistake of visiting with Democrat Chris Murphy and others as well. There were some Republicans there, but whatever was said, Zelensky came away with the wrong attitude to engage Donald Trump for sure. Everyone saw that the exchange, and so I don't think we need to rehash it. But, all of that's history now because President Trump walking away from the signing of the bilateral agreement has prompted President Z to reconsider his position, I would say. As he said in a recent letter to President Trump that President Trump read at his joint session of Congress speech, he indicated a very strong desire now to come back to peace talks and to sign the bilateral agreement with Trump. And that is progress. The deal opens investment opportunities for the U.S. There'll be 50% partners in this endeavor. And it's basically to recover, obviously, the expenditures the U.S. has made. But more crucial, it establishes a fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine from the total destruction that we're looking at right now. And it has manufacturing of its infrastructure and economic, so that it can be an economic powerhouse again and that can't happen without the U.S. And lastly, and it has not been very well emphasized, I don't think, and that's foundational to the whole Ukraine dilemma. And that's Zelensky insists on security guarantees and sees those guarantees very narrowly in terms of military deterrence with military boots on the ground in Ukraine from Europe and the U.S. Well, that's not happening for the U.S. And he's not hearing President Trump and did not hear Secretary Hegseth at the NATO meeting recently. There will be no U.S. boots in Ukraine. What there will be, if he signs the agreement, is American manufacturing and mining industry workers in the Ukraine, and they'll be working right alongside Ukrainians. And that's what represents in Trump's mind a much stronger security measure, since Russia is not likely or would be more reluctant to attack Ukraine, where there's hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans working to rebuild Ukraine.
What happened in those first few minutes? I mean, it went from, hey, how you doing, to all hell broke loose, John. I mean, I know you watched it. We talked about it.
Well, it wasn't in the first few minutes. They went, I think, almost 30 minutes, and it was very civil. And in fact, the president was extremely cordial to the T-shirt guy. That Matt Taibbi said,
Mr. Z. Somebody's saying Zelensky.
The journalist Matt Taibbi thought it was great and asked when the president's going to bring Greta Thunberg in for a similar lecture. But he called it the T-shirt that says, "I fought Putin and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." But, it was very civil. And in fact, the president specifically stated that they would be signing this agreement afterwards. And I agree with everything Dave said, but I would add some other things. The way the press is constantly is morphing everything Trump does through a lens of dishonesty, I believe, but the mainstream media at least. And, there has been U.S. aid involvement there since the beginning of the war to take over Ukraine's farming activities on behalf of large international corporations. There are allegations that a lot of the money that the U.S. has supplied is missing. I think $58 billion. This is, as Dave points out, this is not a rapacious deal. This both helps rebuild the country, gives it an economic future, and acts as a sort of human shield of Americans against further aggression by Russia. But I think what really provoked things was not once but twice when President Zelensky started talking about the big ocean that you Americans have to insulate you from these troubles, and your people are going to be on the ground too. And I think that really set off both the president and vice president, saying, you were not going to tell us that we're bringing our troops in. And there are those who think Chris Murphy and others in the European elites have pushed us into this war, have pushed Russia into this war by trying to admit Ukraine, into NATO. And now basically the president's saying, no, you're not getting the blank check of my predecessor. We are now going to stand up and try to settle this before it does conflate into a broader war. But it seemed to be that's what set it off the rails.
Well, that sent Trump off the rails and J.D. Vance, but what sent Zelensky off to where the Ukrainian ambassador did a facepalm and looked like she needed to get the hell out of the room? What happened there, Graham?
Well, I don't think it was any one specific thing with Zelensky. I think it seemed to me like there was tension between the two leaders, obviously President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, from the get-go. And I think, John made some good points there. And also Dave kind of touched upon a lot of the really kind of underlying factors here. And that is that, Zelensky did practically campaign for Kamala Harris in 2024. And he did meet, and I think this was an incredible, let's just say, lapse of judgment on his part. He did choose to meet with Democrats before he even went to the White House. Zelensky obviously found it very easy to deal with Joe Biden. And now all of a sudden he's there sitting in the Oval Office with President Trump, who he practically campaigned against. And so I think the tension was there from the beginning. I've got a lot to say actually more about what really set Trump off and what's behind his frustration. But in terms of Zelensky, I just think he was immediately uncomfortable just even going into that meeting, because I don't think he ever expected that he would actually be negotiating again with a President Donald Trump to try to end this war. And also, by the way, I'm not sure how much Zelensky wants to end this war. I don't think, Putin certainly doesn't. I think Zelensky only does if he's got basically a country, the US in this case, essentially promising to indefinitely secure and rebuild and prop up Ukraine when this war's over. And of course, that's not going to happen.
Well, obviously, he walked in the door with not a great strategy. I mean, he's ignoring the deal makers and begging for the cameras, and does he not realize that we're not going to help him. I'm not going to send him $50. I mean, that's not the way it works, not under this administration. Andrew, it wasn't a great strategy. What would be a better strategy?
So yeah, everyone's talking about the last, about 10 minutes of that powwow. But if you watch Mr. Zelensky's body language during the entire affair, he's rolling his eyes, he's shaking his head, he's looking at President Trump confused. So he really sent the body language to the mainstream media and tried to garner their sympathy.
Did he use, and this could be the biggest rumor, and I don't want to perpetuate it, but did he use cuss words against the president and the vice president?
I'm not going to speculate on that. And I've heard rumors of that. I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm not going to.
I didn't. I watched the whole thing and I didn't see that. I wondered what the heck was said to make that poor Markova, the ambassador Markova. Correct me if I'm wrong, people. He just did this. Oh God. So.
If Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he did the rounds with the media networks, and he was asked, what the heck happened, and he said that he and his team, they were prepared for Zelensky to appear tough and act strong in front of the press, but what they didn't expect was him to behave that way during the entire thing, and that's what apparently took everyone's surprise. No, according to Mr. Lutnick, nobody planned to ambush Zelensky. Nobody planned for that to spiral out of control the way it did. The whole affair was funny because Trump has been pretty consistent on this whole subject since he ran for president the second time. If you watch a CNN town hall he did with Caitlin Collins, I think it was this past summer, he was asked point blank, do you want Ukraine to win the war? And he said, honestly, I don't care. I just want this war to end. Month later, he's pretty much saying the same thing. I'm not going to start bashing Vladimir Putin. I'm not going to start criticizing you. I'm not going to call you names just because I want this war to come to an end. But now to your overall question, though, what can Zelensky do? He just signed the deal. He has about $12 trillion worth of natural resources under his feet in Ukraine. The government has failed to take advantage of it. Corporations have failed to take advantage of it. You have a powerhouse. You have a business-minded administration coming in to help you to take advantage of those massive amounts of critical rare earth resources. Use it. Close your mouth. Sign the deal, and that is it. And that's all Zelensky has to do. You can end this war, get rich, rebuild your country without having to continue this agonizing affair of with countless deaths and everyone's suffering and being miserable, as Eastern European are aware of.
Yeah, well, that was fun, but it sure sparked other European nations to get dizzy. In their own backyard. It's in their backyard, and I don't know why they're depending on us. But as soon as we know more, Liberty Nation News will let all of you know. Thanks for tuning in. Pam Bondi made a lot of friends with her tough stances on stemming the tide of immigration and being the tough gal on crime. This past week, Bondi bombed. After weeks of saying she had Epstein files on her desk that were sickening and eye-opening, blah, 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 the kind of stuff that most folks don't know much about, she released a big nothing burger. And they posed for pictures, and it was cringeworthy. Where did the Attorney General go that had Congress swooning during confirmation hearings? I mean, let's roll tape on what I'm talking about here.
She understands, as a 20-year prosecutor, that prosecutors have to follow the evidence and the law. And because of her background as someone who is not a super partisan, she had never run for office before running for Attorney General. She doesn't come from the world of politics. She comes from the world of prosecutors and in the criminal justice system, that I do believe that she will act in a way that is always tethered to the law and will not cross that line to making purely political decisions.
And yet, she played right into that whole tease, the tease and the big reveal. And I mean, Graham, there are a lot of Americans disappointed that the big reveal wasn't big or a reveal. I mean, half of us have seen all this information before.
Yeah, that's quite correct, Sarah. Pretty much everything that was released has already been in the public domain, and that's because of previous legal actions that involved the FBI being forced to hand over certain documents as part of an ongoing investigation, part of the discovery process, if you will. And so all of that stuff was out there. I mean, the so-called flight logs and all this kind of information was all there. What the American public really wants to know is who the clients were, because right now you have Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in a federal prison, and I personally am not sure why she's there. She seems to have apparently been aiding and abetting the sex trafficking of young women to nobody at all. And I think, therefore, she should be walking free right now. To be honest with you, I mean,
Until they got something, then they can actually arrest her.
until they got something. Even if you're the most hyper partisan Trump supporter, you could not possibly really defend how Bondi handled this situation, because she did say, as you pointed out, Sarah, she said that she had actually seen this stuff with her own eyes and that it was sickening and it was awful. So then what happens between then and the release of the documents? Because somehow the stuff that she was saying was sitting on her desk that she was reading, that then got passed on to somebody else who made it disappear. Now, there's a lot of rumors that, some of the documents were still being concealed by the FBI, I believe, the New York field office of the FBI. But if that was the case, how did Bondi get to renew them if they were being hidden away somewhere? So it's all very confusing. I don't know how that's going to shake out, but all I do know is that the only way they are going to make this mess kind of disappear in the rearview mirror is to actually get the rest of this stuff out there as soon as possible. And my personal view is, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, my personal view is that the reason why they are still somehow dragging their feet over this is because there are some very big names on this so-called client list. I believe, some prominent members of Congress, probably, among others. And I think that's why everybody is really nervous about it. I'm going to throw it in there, personal opinion. I'm going to throw in there that I think Trump would be quite happy for it all to get out there, no matter whose name's on the list. But I think there's a lot of pressure going on behind the scenes. And I think even Pam Bondi herself, even though she's the Attorney General, I think she herself is even probably being pressured by certain people to, look, you cannot make these names public.
I'm going to pivot to Dave. Bondi did. She pointed the finger at the FBI, but for goodness sake, she's the big boss, correct? I mean, march in there and drag these people on their freaking papers and let's get on with this. This is ridiculous.
Yes, she is the big boss, and those who test her, I believe, are do so at their own peril. There's a truckload of documents that apparently were sitting at the New York field office. I'm sorry, they were actually sitting at the Attorney General of the Southern District
of
New York.
Yeah.
And but the FBI head of the New York field office was cognizant of that. He knew they were there, and I believe that this is an episode, and it's a moment for learning for the new Attorney General, that you can be exposed to what euphemistically referred to as malicious compliance. And this is clear as to what was happening at the in the FBI bureaucracy. You ask for specific things, and they give you specific things. What you had meant to say is that give me everything, and so far that's what has now happened. And there are truckloads, apparently, of all this information and depositions, and particularly testimony before the other kinds of jurisdictions. And, so now she's going to get all of this. And what's happening is that they're going through it. And there must have been something there, because James Dennehy, field office chief, was told to put in his retirement papers. And he did.
Before I get to John Clark, Andrew, I want you to pick up on something that Graham said. And is it perception driving this train of salacious information? Or is there some real meat in this sandwich? Or is this going to be a nothing burger?
Maybe it's our obsession with, John Le Carre novels and movies and espionage and all this stuff. I mean, what are we really expecting out of all these documents? Are these documents expected to detail certain, blackmail cases of members of Congress? I mean, are we expecting, let's say, one document that shows this member of Congress had a foot fetish and he was recorded on tape and then he was blackmailed to advance some certain agreement or get information on a certain public official? I mean, is that what we're really expecting out of all these? Because from after all these years of just dragging by both administrations so far, anyway, for at least on the Trump side, it seems like we're not going to get anything substantive. All we're going to get are these publicity stunts that we had the other day with those conservative paid influencers who go on the White House lawn and hold up these binders. I mean, if this thing is as serious as they say, then why would you have this PR stunt? I mean, that was, I think, so far of this administration and how young it is, that was probably the biggest blunder so far.
It was stupid. It was cringeworthy.
Exactly. So, but for recent reporting and comments from Pam Bondi suggest that, yes, now there's going to be real documentation coming out, but it's probably just cleanup on aisle 9 is once again going to be another dud. So my prognostication is don't hold your breath anymore. That something really, important is going to be released in the future.
John Clark, I'm going to give you almost the last word because I always get the last word, but I'm going to slide you in right here. People want answers. They didn't get them. Are they ever going to get them?
Well, I'll hope so. And I think there's a lot of speculation going on, including by this panel, and I will join it because I will offer some other speculations. I've heard a lot of different things. Now, you may recall I was a criminal defense attorney for years, and Pam Bondi has emphasized strongly that she is not going to proceed in a way that would expose victims. The victims might not just be the sex workers. For instance, was Chris Murphy there? I don't know. Maybe that's why he's running around. Was Tom Hanks there? Was he an influencer or was he doing something illegal? We have statute of limitations issues. As a lawyer, I can say I never talk to the press. So it's already maybe out of her wheelhouse to be doing this. And I wonder if the pressure isn't just for her to reveal everything, but for her to reveal something, because the left, mimicked or ridiculed the right for saying there was this, there were all these names. It was like a conspiracy theory. Well, I think the big news is that she has found out that she was lied to and that thousands of documents were withheld. She's not just fired the guy. She's insisted that Kash Patel do an investigation as to why they were withheld. And there are some who are suggesting that this itself was not so much a media stunt as an effort to flesh out more witnesses so that she could do something more than just have salacious news stories, but actually criminally convict people, again, if there are statutes of limitations and the evidence available. And I do hope that that's the case. I'm speculating, but I
But if they have statute of limitations, then they better get the show on the road.
Well, if they're minors, the statutes of limitations are pretty much wide open. But I am hopeful that she's actually being, as we saw in the clip, she's an experienced prosecutor. She hasn't historically been partisan minded, and that really does intrude and compromise the integrity of her position. Some of the commentators are saying that this is actually a ploy to get people panicked and get whistleblowers out who will act as state's evidence against some of the other people. And now it certainly seems to me that aside from whatever else has happened, we have to find out why the FBI deliberately, it appears, withheld large tranches of documents from the highest law enforcement official, arguably, in the country. So I don't think that it's over yet. And I will be disappointed if she doesn't come out with some meat to put on these bones as far as some actual convictions. But that's a very different thing. To get a criminal conviction, you could compromise the whole process by this sort of thing.
Publicizing everything.
Right. So, I don't know what her true mission is. And I think we're all waiting to see.
I think, too, that you have to realize, Sarah, that this case isn't just this immediate Epstein arrest and apparent suicide. This goes back 10 years to.
No, I get that. I get it.
Also,
but this has been a teaser for a long time with this administration, and this administration needs to deliver to the American people.
Well, it also includes all of the grand jury testimony. And if you've ever seen the reams of grand jury testimony, I mean, it fills houses. And so you can kind of understand why they didn't want to dump all this on her. But then again, she asked for it and should have gotten it. And so and she didn't. And now they're looking for a new FBI chief at the New York field office. Anyone else?
Doge handle it all.
All right. Well, Carly Simon said it best. Anticipation is making me wait. Thanks, panel. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back and let you know if we got anything with, as John Clark would say, meat on the bones. The COVID pandemic gave Americans one really good gift: a healthy skepticism of federal agencies. Part of this distrust is due to the misinformation about the safety and efficacy of the Rush coronavirus vaccine. And this is prompting the public to dig deeper on the vaccines that we have taken for 60 years and just try to figure out what's being put into our bodies. Let's review reality on RFK's stance on those vaccines.
If we want uptake of vaccines, we need a trustworthy government. In other nations where they don't have mandates, like Japan and a few years ago in Germany, they had the same uptake as we did, without any mandates, because people trust their government. That's what I want to restore to the American people and the vaccine program. I want people to know if the government says something, it's true. It's not manipulative. And it's not a noble truth, which is what a certain doctor called his lies.
Well, on the other side of the coin, measles has seen a rise in cases due to declining vaccination rates, or at least that's what the alarmists are telling us. And not that anybody believes in coincidences, but it does seem a little suspect. John Clark, can you separate the wheat from the chaff for us?
Well, there's a lot of wheat and chaff here.
Well, you're in South Dakota. Just figure it out.
Well, it is really quite complex, but I think there is some separation to be done. And I do think that people rightfully have some skepticism of their government agencies, which hopefully Bobby Kennedy will restore. Remember, perhaps, when Anthony Fauci said that COVID vaccines were just like measles. COVID is nothing like measles if you understand microbiology. In fact, we supposedly have lifetime immunity from measles if we've had that shot or if we've had natural immunity, which Dave probably has. I learned in researching for this today, actually, the vaccines came out in 1963, the year I was born, and I need to be revaccinated because from 1963 to 1967, they used an inactivated mRNA vaccine, which was ineffective. The CDC says so. All right, Dave's good. Dave can tell us what measles are like, perhaps. And actually, most people don't die from measles. And so what I'm seeing is a major spin campaign by the mainstream media here. First of all, the two big criticisms of Kennedy are that he said this is not unusual, and therefore he is sort of minimizing the outbreak and people dying. Well, that's not true. It is not unusual. We have them almost every year. There's a worldwide growth of measles cases. Measles do not appear spontaneously, sua sponte, out of the air. They are transmitted. What you won't hear the mainstream media discussing, unless they're going to fact check that it's false, is the potential for illegal immigrants to come over here and spread it. Of course, it's all the people that are anti-vax or vaccine hesitant, which are increasing in percentages, including in Texas, partly because they don't trust what's just been done with the COVID vaccine. So once again, it's you create the uncertainty and then you criticize the people for what you caused. 5 of the cases, according to the Texas Department of Health, are people who were previously vaccinated. We don't actually have confirmation that this young girl tragically died had measles. We don't know what PCR test was used. My understanding from a contact in D.C. is that she's Mexican. Is she illegal or illegal? Was she around other people? Where did she get it from? And yes, it's spreading, but Kennedy has been true to everything he promised. And he has come out and said, yes, I advocate for measles vaccines, which, by the way, for young children recommended here in Vermont, age 6 to 11 months, they do have higher rates of seizures and other problems and potential death, according to the vaccine adverse event reporting system, than if they had the vaccine a little bit older. And the vaccine reporting system will kick out cases that might have been vaccine caused if they say, well, we don't have enough evidence, or that was SIDS, or what have you. And then we have the converse thing we saw in COVID, which is if you die in a car crash with COVID, they categorize you, or you get shot in the head in a gun battle and you had COVID, they say
dark on me.
Well, I'm just telling you that they've manipulated the statistics. This is breeded distrust. So this whole push is going to push to what? Mandate more big pharma? Kennedy is very clear that he still respects parental consent.
All right, Dave, and John Clark brought this up, so we're just going to build on this a little bit. Let's circle back to Texas. What do you consider an outbreak? One case where a child tragically died, 2 or 20? I mean, where is this outbreak panic coming from?
I think that, Sarah, that you have to go to the Center for Disease Control and what their definition is. And the CDC considers 3 related cases in a defined area as an outbreak. And 3. And, I have some statistics that, that might surprise you. The West Texas has been the focus so far of the attention. As of the end of February, there have been 164 cases of measles reported in 8 states, 8 other states: Alabama, California, Georgia, Kentucky, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and Rhode Island. But in 2024, there were 285 cases of measles. In the 2025 so far, about 95% of the people who contracted measles were not vaccinated. In 2024, 89% of the measles cases were among unvaccinated. But what I found that puts the current outbreak in some perspective is that between 1985 and 1995, there was an annual average number of cases of measles of 6,832, with the highest number occurring in 1990 when there were 27,808 cases. That kind of puts the 164 in perspective.
Hey, Andrew, you have young children. Can you weigh in here on the massive amount of vaccines offered to the youngins or pushed on the youngins? I mean, I had vaccines as a kid, but not just throwing 8 or 9 of them at you when you're 8 months old.
Yeah, well, my kids are updated on their vaccines, and you pretty much have to be if you want your kids to participate in events up here, or even go to school. Before we went on air, I was looking at our kids' vaccine schedule, and here's what we have here. We have diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, hemophilus influenza type B, hepatitis B, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, with chickenpox, pneumococcal conjugate, meningococcal conjugate, rotavirus, and human papilloma virus. Those are the things you have to have. They had everything up until they're 5 years old. The next shot is when they're in middle school. That's the vaccine schedule. I was comparing that to the United States, and pretty much the United States is roughly the same, plus or minus a couple of more. This doesn't bother me. Vaccines, I think, these are decades long in the making. The difference with the COVID vaccine is that it was not decades in the making. It was happened overnight. We expect this thing would take 5 years to manufacture. Instead, it was just produced in 9 months. What bothers me with the whole medical establishment is that during the pandemic, all the common sense from the medical establishment was just abandoned. They all said that, immunity is not a thing anymore. And, you shouldn't worry about the future when you're wearing face masks and having all these preventative measures. Lo and behold, a couple of years out of this pandemic, you're having all these different things returning and accelerating with fast and furious. We just had norovirus. Norovirus, that thing was on the decline up here. And then in the last couple of years, it's been skyrocketing. I read this article, I think it was in CBC, And now these doctors are talking about, oh, now our immunological memories are fading because we were locked in and we were maxed up for however many of years. But who foisted upon this? Who recommended these policies? These very scientists who now warn about these very things. I remember the pandemic, we worried about, we questioned, what about immunity? Or what about in the future when your immunity is tested by whatever disease? And they said, oh, you're crazy. That's cuckoo talk. Why would you talk about those things? Now, fast forward, here's the very things we're dealing with, and now they're so severe. Our kids were in hospital a couple of years with RSV, and they had pneumonia, and they had COVID, of course, and they had all these different things. Now they got norovirus. Now the influenza, whenever it comes back, it hits them with like a brick. And one more thing, the flu vaccine, that's something that we should be looking into, because that thing this year had a 40% efficacy rate. My kids had it and they had flu twice in 1 month. What the freak is that? So that's what we should be concerned about. I'm not too worried for now with the vaccines, because our kids, they're developing greatly. They're very smart. They're doing well in school. They're very healthy. Of course, besides the winter,
For all the flus in your house.
So that's my position on the general vaccine.
I think
Eat healthier food.
all the creeping crud in Canada is at Andrew's house, so just avoid him. Okay, this is the thing I kind of find more disturbing than the fight over vaccinations, but there's a very close relationship between Big Pharma and the FDA. I mean, is it too much gov love going on here, Graham?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a perennial problem, and I guess an unavoidable problem in a free society is that you're going to have people who go to work for the government, and because of their position within the government and their specific skill set and the specific experience and knowledge that they gained, they're going to go out when their government time is over, unless they're a career bureaucrat. They're going to go out into the private sector and they're going to get offered a nice job out there, which is kind of the leveraging what they learned in government, using it in the private sector. Well, how can that be avoided? I agree, Sarah. It gets really worrisome when we're talking about certain, kind of science-based and particularly health-based government agencies that have got this, kind of interchangeability of personnel with the private sector. And particularly, the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA, historically, the FDA is pretty much in the pocket of the pharmaceutical companies. FDA commissioners regularly end up on the boards of directors of one of the big pharma companies, be it Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, whoever. John actually wrote an excellent article about this recently in the pages of libertynation.com. He pointed out a couple of great examples. For instance, Scott Gottlieb was the FDA commissioner back for about 2 years, from 2017 to 2019, FDA commissioner. And then what did he do after he finished his time in that position? After I believe he resigned, and I believe he said that he wanted to spend more time with his family. Well, obviously his family all last worked for Pfizer.
Ever.
Because that's why he went. He went and he got on the board of directors of Pfizer. You've almost got a situation where these pharmaceutical companies are kind of embedding their employees inside the FDA. And then, and they're doing a couple of years there, and then they're going back to the private sector, back to Big Pharma. And I have mixed feelings on vaccinations. I think some are good, some are probably we should be a little more skeptical of. But I'm not a complete anti-vaxxer. I mean, as Andrew said, some of these vaccines have been around forever, and they're tried and tested, and that's fine. But it is concerning when you've got profit-driven pharmaceutical companies basically almost like loaning their employees to the Food and Drug Administration of the U.S. government.
If I could jump in, I think I need to issue a disclaimer, though, about something I said earlier. I feel that I compelled to that I was not indicating that the case in Texas was attributable to illegals, just that the media does not allow that to even be discussed while they go after parents who may have legitimate questions about giving young children vaccines. And I have another piece.
There's not enough information. I think I'm going to close with the sage words of our Mr. John Clark, who apparently all of us now worship when it comes to vaccinations. Many Americans believe they are being double jabbed by an oligopoly of pharmaceutical manufacturers who don't bother revolving the door, but just leave it brazenly wide open. And they are now closely watching who makes their vaccines and who regulates them. Well said, Mr. Clark. Thanks, panel, and thank you for watching. We're back to have a little fun with our panel of smarty pants panelists. Our economic comic has survived, is back in the entertaining world of C5 and hosting away. Take it, Andrew.
Hello, and for the first time in quite a while, I have nothing for you this week except terrific questions for C5 trivia. Is everybody ready for this?
Yes.
Yes.
I said, is everybody ready for C5?
Yes! Whee!
Graham, are
Give me
you?
a C. Give me a 5.
Just for fun!
All right, so as we all know, I ask a question. Dave is the last to provide an answer. Everyone chimes in first. All right, that's how it works. All right. So, sorry, let me get my pen ready and my pencil so I can confirm who's winning the answer, who's winning trivia today. So, question 1. What was the name of the agency that became DOGE? Was it Affordable Care Act, U.S. Digital Service, or Office of Assessments?
U.S. Digital
US
Service.
Digital Service.
I mean, I'm glad Sarah and Graham got that, but we all know Dave was the first to answer this. You guys have to say quick, fast as you can, the answer. Even if it's gibberish, I will give it to you.
Even if it's wrong.
I got it.
Dave.
I got it wrong first. Yeah, I was the first one to get it wrong.
Anyway, Dave, yes, that is correct, Dave. It is U.S. Digital Service. Question number 2. A penny for your thoughts, anybody? Let's have some sense and sensibility. Do you have any common sense? Anyway, so as you know, the question number 2 is, why does President Donald Trump want to eliminate pennies from U.S. currency? Is it because of the production cost, the dislike of Abraham Lincoln, or too many circulating?
Production
cost.
Yes, it is. The answer is production cost, except if you are Scott Cosenza, our legal affairs editor, it would be because of your dislike of Abraham Lincoln. So, question 3.
Do not throw Scott Cosenza under the bus. You will pay for it. Trust me.
Question number 3. When is the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, supposed to end its operation? Is it Independence Day 2026, William McKinley's birthday in 2027, or when President Trump leaves office?
Independence Day 2026.
I did not know that. I just learned something to throw around at the bar later.
Yes, I knew that actually. It was in the executive order. I think one of the first.
Oops.
Question 4. Jessica Vaughn, the director of policy studies at the Center for Immigration Studies, recently delivered a report to Congress illustrating the need for oversight in which programs. Is it gender training, guest worker, or workplace DEI?
The guest worker.
Yeah.
4 for 4. Dave is correct. It is guest worker.
Are you giving him the answers before we go on the air? Because he is just barking too much.
I just actually think that Dave's is the only voice that Andrew hears when.
I kind of think you're right.
You know what? I think
Pentagon Dave.
I think Dave is a kind elderly man with a good memory. Not
And natural immunity to measles. He's the only one.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Watch out.
Okay, moving on. Question number 5. What typically happens to gun sales when a Republican is the president? Except, of course, if you are James Fight. Is it they fall, they rise, or they skyrocket?
They fall.
Fall.
See, Dave said A, but then Sarah said they fall. So I'm going to just give that to Sarah just for...
Go ahead. She needs it.
No. I don't need your pity points.
No.
Screw that. Oops, I probably shouldn't have said that. Sorry, people.
And actually, this is a fascinating subject that you can read more on the pages of LibertyNation.com of Guess Who's Buying Guns These Days. Terrific read. Okay, question number 6. Which European leader summoned his European Union counterparts for an emergency meeting to discuss President Trump excluding them from negotiations with Russia? Was it French President Emmanuel Macron, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, or was it Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen?
Macron.
Danish.
Graham actually got that first. Yes, Graham.
Good for you, Graham.
It is
I'm rooting for you, Graham.
You guys are in this still. You guys are in this.
I was a little hesitant.
All right. Question number 7. What Washington, D.C. event this recently featured a long list of Trump haters who, of course, carried around blue hair, who sported blue hair? Was it Save Democracy Now, Unity is Strength, or Principles First Summit?
Principles First Summit.
That's right. Principles First. And
Blue hair first.
Maybe we should just all clap for Dave and just concede now.
He's got the cards. He's got the cards.
He's got all the cards.
He's gambling.
I don't have any cards.
This is not the game. I'm not playing game here.
Okay, question 8. In a recent announcement, what did Senator Mitch McConnell say he would not do?
Run for re-election. I'm just going to say it. Everybody knows it. Dave knows it, and I'm just going to beat him to the punch.
She doesn't get it. She broke the rules. She didn't let him finish.
No, I do get it, because I'm tired of Dave winning.
No.
See, I'm facing...
And everyone on this panel knows that.
See, I'm facing a quandary because I know Dave is following the rules and provides the answer, but I'm sick and tired of him constantly winning this event.
Hold it. I haven't gotten a coffee cup. I haven't gotten anything.
Oh, but you know what? When that Vance rolls around, Dave, that's when you get all the prizes.
Okay,
Rules
I'll wait. I'll wait.
So our viewers who may not know, okay, so the answers that were provided were lead the Senate, run for re-election, and eat solid foods. The answer, run for re-election.
I kind of like the last one.
I'm just
I don't think Mitch has ever eaten solid food.
I don't either. What do turtles eat?
What do turtles eat? Yes, Jinx, you owe me a latte. There you go. So anyway, but yes, so the answer is yes, running for re-election, and I'm going to give that to Sarah because she looks lovely in black.
She cheated.
Question 9.
I cheated. I don't care. Sue me.
Cheaters always prosper. My kids did not hear that, by the way. Question 9. What nickname did House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries recently give Trump? Was it Captain Chaos, Pantagruel, or Puttin's puppet?
Captain Chaos.
Graham got that. Yes, Graham. Captain Chaos is the answer here.
That's about it. So if I hadn't got it,
fits.
that would have been bad.
Yes.
I think it fits.
So actually, nobody's gonna catch up to Dave here. But anyway, so I'm giving the heads up to everybody. Last question of C5 trivia for this week. Question number 10. In President Trump's first administration, Kash Patel, now the head of the FBI, had various roles in which community? Was it national security, legal, or laundry services?
National security.
Graham gets national security correct, and he is number 2 this week. So actually, because part of Dave,
You're number 2.
Graham
You're
is-
number 2. That's the first loser slot, by the way.
So anyway, so that is it for C5 Trivia. Dave, yes, is of course the winner. I don't know how many times he's won this thing. It's frustrating. Why do viewers even watch? They should just skip from the right to the end. Actually, no.
Hey,
no,
now.
never do that. No, watch from beginning to end, and always give us a like for every C5 Trivia just for fun.
Yeah, Andrew. Jeez, what's wrong with you? Okay, folks, thanks for playing again. Hope we left you all with some smiles or maybe some, grimaces. And a few future facts to toss around at the next family dinner to irritate your leftist friends. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Well, that's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel where you can see all of her TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary, your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.